We have with us Mr. George A. Thomas, who will be taking up the next session, that is session 4 for the day. Uh, Mr. George A. Thomas is a teacher by vocation. His educational qualification reads Master in English Literature and Economics, B.Ed, PG Diploma in Guidance and Counseling. He has spent his teaching career with St. Paul's, Sirohi, Padma Binani DAV Public School, Binani Gram, Udaipur at St. George's, Udaipur, and Nirja Modi School, Udaipur. He has been working as a coordinator of CBSE for 6 years in Udaipur city. He was master trainer of COE, CBSE. He was also a telecounselor for CBSE in New Delhi, telecounselor and advisor for Department of School Education in Jammu and Kashmir. He was highly appreciated by HRD Minister for contribution towards education, appreciated 5 times by CBSE chairperson for being a CBSE telecounselor. Mr. George is presently working as the principal of Nirja Modi School, Udaipur. We welcome you, sir. Mr. George, are you there?
Good evening, ma'am.
Yes. Yeah. So, Mr. George will take over the session for the day.
So, good evening, everyone.
Good evening, George.
Good evening, Father. Good evening, Father Ravi.
Yeah.
And a very, very good evening to all the Reverend Fathers, sisters, as well as all the teachers who are taking part in this fourth session. I know you've had a very long day, and the session that we've just had from 3 to 4 was really very interesting and has given us a lot of food for thought. It's getting very difficult for me, Father Ravi, to jump from what you've given to us to think about, to move on to something that has got to do with the day-to-day working of the school. Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you are
Yes, sir,
audible.
you are audible.
Continue, sir.
Fine. As school leaders, just a second, please. Yes, as school leaders, can we just give it a thought? I think many of you must have heard about the dead horse theory.
आपकी वॉइस ब्रेक हो रही थी हाँ नहीं इसलिए
Is there any issue there? Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Fine, fine. So I'm going to talk about the dead horse theory. Now you have to decide who is that dead horse. Now, according to a tribal wisdom of the Dakota Indians, passed on from generations to generation, which says that when you discover that you're riding a dead horse, the best strategy is to dismount. When you are riding a dead horse, the best strategy is to dismount. However, in the modern day business and education and even the government, a whole range of far more advanced strategies are often employed. Now, I will leave it up to you to decide whether you want to take your institution as a dead horse, whether you want the management to think of the principal as a dead horse, whether you want the principal to think of a particular staff member as a dead horse, or you want to think about a teacher talking about a student as a dead horse. I leave it up to you. The present day scenario has so many things, so many options for us. Many times we think of buying a stronger whip. Sometimes we think of changing the rider. Sometimes the horse is threatened of termination. Sometimes a committee is taken up to decide on why is this horse dead? And sometimes lowering the standards so that the dead horses can be included. And it goes on and on and on. I think somewhere or the other, as school leaders, as teachers, instead of putting ourselves into that position, we need to be updated and alert. And we need to be one of those horses that would be chosen as the best one for the Derby. And many a times, it is taken and seen in many of the institutions around the world that a dead horse is promoted to a supervisory position to hire another horse. Now, come on. I think somewhere or the other, we have to come to terms. Today, in my session, I'm going to talk about the general functioning of a school. It's going to be like a roller coaster ride because, there's so much to talk about. There are so many things which I feel are very important and which you may feel is something in routine. But I think as we move ahead, we need to be very, 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 very particular about the norms that we need to follow under Central Board of Secondary Education. There are certain very, very clear-cut guidelines, and I think we shouldn't think about any if or but about it, because if you want the school to function properly, I would advise, I would request, I would humbly ask the school leaders or those who are intending to become school leaders, the teachers, to please be aware about what's happening around in the state of affairs. What's happening in CBSE, the circulars that come up every day in the morning. We generally get up, I was just talking to one of the principals and saying that, we generally get up in the morning and move our hand around looking for the mobile. And the first thing that we look for is how many good mornings have we got? What are the messages that we've got? Now, I think we need to put ourselves onto that mobile to search out for what are the new things that Central Board of Secondary Education has got for us. I'm not going to talk about anything new first. I'll just let you know about these two things because it really matters a lot to the school leaders. You must have heard about these two terms, the UDICE and we have the OSS. UDICE is something that we fill for the state board, the local education department, and OSS, the online affiliated schools information system that we have, is for the Central Board of Secondary Education, which came into existence after the UDICE came into existence in 2012 and 13. I think most of you know the full form of UDICE. It is the Unified District Information System for Education. Now, why I want to emphasize on this is, it has been noted many a times that the information that schools register or fill in UDICE is many a times varying or different from the information that you have in the OSS. Like when we go for inspections, most of the principals, you get a chance to go for inspections for affiliation. We have come across many situations and cases where we find that the school records have something at hand with them. The person who has filled in, the team of teachers, of staff that have filled in the details in the UDICE, something else is there. And you have another team that fills in the details for the OSS. I believe it should be one single team handling all three, and the information that we have in all the other two, and of course the data that we have at hand, should be the same. These days, because UDICE and OSS have been linked with each other, if there is any discrepancy, immediately the CBSE office, that's the affiliation department, catches hold of it. And I think some way or the other, we at the grassroots level, that is the school, should make sure that whatever we fill in is perfect. I'll just come up to this new thing that has come out these days. Thanks, I would say thanks to Corona or COVID-19 pandemic. Classes will move on as usual. Students have been promoted from 8th to 9th and 9th to 10th and 11th and 12th. And the system is moving ahead. But at the same time, the affiliation process cannot be hindered. And for that reason, the board came out with the virtual inspection of schools. And I think each one of us in every school has already got the standard operating procedures. Those schools who were applying for fresh affiliation, those who've applied for upgradation, that's for grade 11th and 12th, and those who have applied for extension of affiliation, some way or the other, you must have come across this. And the standard operation process is very, very clear. I am not going to get into the details of that, but it is just to brief you up that please do not take it for granted, thinking that now since the inspector is not going to come physically to the school, we can have a gala time. It's not that way. You'll have the inspectors, and of course, it's all going to be done through Microsoft Team, of course. And it's going to be virtual, and you'll have a CBSE official monitoring it. So the process, I think, has become all the more serious. I request all the school leaders, fathers and sisters, please be more vigilant and careful. Kindly make sure that all our documents are proper and updated. Otherwise, we, towards the end, when we start cribbing about things, and when we have a whole long list of compliances coming from the Central Board of Secondary Education, we get anxious, and some way or the other, we believe that the inspection was not done well. But let me tell you the truth, it is we who are at fault when we do not have our things put in order in the right place. One of the most important documents, I would say, as per the CBSE affiliation, you'll have Appendix 2 and you have this Appendix 3. Most of you are aware of it. These two documents need to be filled up and you need to get it signed by the district education officer. And it is only then that we forward it to the Central Board of Secondary Education. Now, let me tell you, school leaders, in this process, I have personally come across a few cases where the school records, I'll give you an example, the actual allotted land for the school, for example, was 10,000 square meters. The school has got all the land documents of 10,000 square meters. And for some reason or the other, while filling in Appendix 2 and 3, the total land available for the school, they have written maybe 11,000. The documents, the land papers that have been submitted are only of 10,000. The district education officer has signed on 11,000. And when it goes to the CBSE there and when they scrutinize, the matter comes up, and it may come up as if you're running the institution in two different plots of land. Or even if you have bought, maybe it is not registered, or it is not within that same boundary of 10,000 square meters that you had already registered for. So these things will create problems for us. And it may not only come under compliance, but it can even have a big question mark on the whole system. So please, I'll request everyone that whenever we are filling, especially Appendix 2 and 3, we need to be very, very vigilant. We need to be very, very careful. The next important document that we generally have to submit is the fire safety certificate. I think everybody will agree with me that we prefer approaching the fire officer and requesting him to give us a certificate, at times without fulfilling all the necessary documents, necessary things that are to be set up in the building for our safety, for our children's safety. I'll beg your pardon for what I'm going to say. We are even ready to hand over at times a little bit of money to get this certificate. Why can't we, as school owners, make it sure that our institutions have all those things done in the right manner, in the right process, so that we do not have to bow our heads in front of anyone? We talk about honesty, we talk about being truthful, but at the same time, we want to compromise for these little things which actually mean a lot for all of us. So the fire safety certificate, though we have to have it, you generally get it for a year. Once we get it and the affiliation process is done, we forget about it. And then we rise up, wake up from our sleep, back again when it's time to apply for affiliation. So I think we need to be very, very particular about this part. And as per the standards laid down by the fire department, we should make sure that our schools are equipped with all the necessary equipments that are required, so that when a fire officer comes, he can straight away inspect and quickly hand over a fire safety certificate to us. The next important one that we have is a certificate for safe drinking water and sanitary conditions. Again, many of us do not take this up seriously. For both these certificates, Central Board of Secondary Education has given the appendix. The format is over there, and we need to get our certificate made in this format exactly. Many of us believe that, okay, our tanks are clean, water is flowing enough for the kids. But these days, somewhere or the other, due to all the diseases that are prevailing, due to all the other problems that we are facing, I think on priority basis, we should make sure that at least our schools have this RO system where we can provide our children with safe drinking water. so that whenever the inspector comes for inspection, at least he certifies us with what we have as perfect. At the same time, when we talk about the sanitary conditions, we talk about the cleanliness of the whole campus, along with that, especially our washrooms. School leaders, Reverend fathers, sisters, I think some way or the other, we need to, if we haven't done it yet, we need to restructure or revamp the strategy that we have, especially in our washrooms. The whole system should be, nowadays, we look out for state-of-the-art systems. The washroom, I believe, should be cleaner than a classroom. And unless and until we do not keep it on priority, we will not be able to accomplish it. Another very important thing, as we had Dr. Jonas speaking in the morning, and he said that BC is before Corona, DC is during Corona, and now we'll have AC, that's after Corona. And we speak about after Corona, I think somewhere or the other, we should be ready to change the whole scenario with at least the wash area where our kids wash their hands, because it's not going to, in case the schools reopen in the near future, it is not going to be that fruitful for a kid to carry with him or her a sanitizer always. It may happen in the cities, but as we move to smaller towns and the rural areas where we have our schools, somewhere or the other, I think we will have to provide them with more and more wash areas so that they can wash their hands frequently. I think this has to start moving. We need to start making these facilities better for our children. Once the schools reopen, we cannot do all these things overnight. It will take a lot of time. So we have section-wise, maybe the primary, floor-wise, we'll have to put these things roundabout, easily accessible for the children in the corridors, easily accessible for the staff in the corridors, so that there would be lesser bit of contamination as the kids grow up. Another very important certificate, that's a building safety certificate. These are three most important certificates I think we generally submit at the time of affiliation. And I think all the old principals, you know about it. Those who are aspiring or taking up as principals, you may not be very well aware about it, but please make sure that the building is fit. And for that, you need to move to the Public Works Department, and the engineers from there will come and inspect your things and provide you a certificate with regard to that. And even that is given for 1 year in most of the places. I would once again urge and request all the principals to please make sure that your buildings are taken care of in the best possible manner so that it's easy for us to get the certificate. We talk about the land that is available with us, because this is a very, very serious issue these days. The number of sections that are allotted to a school. It's very, very clearly mentioned in the affiliation bylaws. And I don't think there should be any doubt with regard to this. Pan-India, according to clause 3.2, that's when you look at serial number I, and if you look at serial number H there, if you have the campus area of 8,000 square meters and you're running the school up to class 12, that's grade 1 to 12, you are allowed to have 48 sections. That makes 4 sections with each class. Now, when we talk about this, I think some way or the other, the first thing that will click to everyone's mind is the number of students that are allowed in each section. I think we are all aware about it. But there is a twist in it. I'll take you to the next slide and you'll understand that. We've been talking about having 40 students in a section. Now, recently there was one of the principals who called up and they've got a show cause notice and an explanation because the number of students in grade 10 in that school was 42. And there was a case of direct admission there for which they had applied to the board. And these days for direct admission, you have a big performer which you need to fill properly and a lot of details have been asked over there. And very clearly, the school authorities wrote number of students 42 and number of sections 1. And actually the existing section in that school is 1. Now they had to reply for that. And it got me, at least it took me a lot of time to make that school principal understand. Because according to him, that I have only got 2 extra, come on, how can I run another section? So I said, when you were filling in the form, as per the number of students in a section, we are allowed to have 40. You should have mentioned 2 sections and number of students 42. But at the same time, we have to make sure that the teacher-student ratio is also maintained. So based on that, we are supposed to have 1.5 teachers for each section. That's 1.5 teacher for each section. And if you're having that 1.5 teacher for each section, then the students per section should not exceed 45. So this is something which I think everybody should be very, very clear about. The number of students in a particular class, that is grade 9 or grade 10, you divide it by 40 and you will get the number of sections there. If you want it to be 45, please make sure that your teacher-student ratio is as per what is demanded. Now, this had come up in the year 2017, and I put up the circular over here for you, the online registration of class 9th and 11th for 2017-18. And since then, we are following this pattern. There was a big hue and cry in 2017-18 when this thing had come up. But later on, everyone got well versed with it, and some way or the other, now we are more clear with it. I am just going to take up the infrastructure part with 2 or 3 important ones that I feel are being neglected. I will not talk about the classrooms here because all the schools really take good care of the classrooms, ventilations. You'll have a smart smart board over there. You'll have the tag boards put over there. Many of us put the best furniture over there because we have the parents teachers meeting and all these things happening in the class. Children will go home and maybe they'll complain. But I am going to talk about the school library. Father Thomas had specially asked me to talk a little bit about how the school library is to be taken care of. These days, as it is already noticed, and it is in practice, children as well as elders, and to mark it, teachers, that includes me, we generally have lost that habit of reading. And I personally believe that the heart of a school, is the library. We need to promote reading. We need to make sure that our teachers, as well as our students, have this habit of not only during the library periods that they have, the reading periods that they have, during other free periods also, staff, when they are free, should spend some time in the library, because for a teacher, as far as that person does not read avidly, is not going to enhance his knowledge. When we set up a library, generally, the minimum number of books at the start should be at least 1500. Of course, there is a student book ratio. That means your number of books total there, for every student, we should have at least 5 books. Now, it will all count upon the budget that we allocate for this. And that depends upon basically the management and the leader of the school to decide whether we require quality books or we require books in quantity. Many of us have seen that you do find, sample books that are given the beginning of before the session ends. A lot of publishers bring a lot of books. We stuff them into the library. Apart from that, just to increase the number of books over there, many of us try to purchase the cheaper ones so that you pay less and you get more number of books. I think somewhere or the other, as educators, we have to start thinking broadly. We need to provide the best of these facilities to our kids, and it's just not providing the facility there, it is making them understand that it is this room that you have in the school which may make your future, because this is a place which is going to give you that staircase to think creatively, liberally, and enjoy a future that could be based basically on the books that you've read. Now, curriculum is very vast for the students these days. Somewhere or the other, students are so busy with school, after which they generally run for tuitions, after which they are generally caught up with their mobiles and the other gadgets for their games. And of course, these days, there's a new thing that has come up, series. Most of the adolescents, because I'm into counseling, we have a lot of issues these days coming up. Students sleeping at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock. And there's a thing called Netflix, through which they get onto watching series, and basically they're becoming nocturnal students. And when it's time for them to be present in their classes, the videos are off, the audio is off, and they are busy basically either dozing off or into other things. I think somewhere or the other, as educators, and I would say it's the educator who's the best motivator, who can transform the lives of students. When we talk about the library books, I think each and every library, of course, these days we don't have children coming in. I have come across so many schools where we have basically stopped subscribing newspapers and magazines because there's nobody to read, and they feel that why should we waste money for all these things during the COVID session that we are having just now. But I think whenever we reopen, before that, we must equip ourselves back again with the best that we have in hand for our children. Another very, very important issue over here. The library shall not contain any book or other forms of literature that espouse or propagate communal disharmony or casteism or discrimination based on religion, regions, or language. The school should not stock in the library any book disapproved by the government or the board. I'm telling you, it is the school leader and the management completely responsible for this. That is why, whenever the school gets the magazines that are subscribed, many times you do have certain issues where you may have things that are objectionable. Please make sure that they are scrutinized properly. As a school leader, if you do not have the time to do that, kindly ensure that you have at least some senior teacher doing it, or of course the librarian is solely responsible before he puts them onto the rack. These are some of the documents or registers that need to be maintained. There are many more we have to, but these are some of the general ones we generally keep for a librarian to function properly in order to have a complete record of everything. At any point of time, if the librarian leaves and goes, at least you have something to be taken over and handed over to the next person without any flaw. The first one that we have over here is the accession register for the general books. Whenever we purchase books, it comes in through bills. Before they go onto the racks, it has to get into the accession register. We generally have a book bank. And for the book bank, a special record register has to be maintained. If you do not have a book bank, please ensure that you start maintaining a book bank, because students from grades 9th to 12th, many of them want certain books which are a little expensive and may not be affordable to certain students in the market. And I think as educationists, we should provide these things to those children who really long for it. Magazines and newspapers, whatever you're subscribing, maybe 15, 20 magazines, please make sure that you have a separate register for that. All the regular national dailies and the local dailies generally are required not only for the staff, but for the students. There is a special register which we maintain for the students' issue register. It's all available in the market, and your librarians are perfect with that. But I believe somehow or the other, we should know what's happening in there. We leave everything to them, and basically, when we are asked something, we are blank. You have a separate register for the staff, which is called the staff issue register, and all the bills of purchases of books and things are maintained in a particular file. Apart from that, we have another one called the fine register. It depends upon the school authorities whether you decide to have a fine register or not. There are schools which do not charge any fines. I would all say it's not required, but in order to keep them or make them responsible some way or the other, it's required. We've moved from this system of actually having books these days to a system called e-library. And through the e-library or the digital library, we have a virtual reposition of books, journals, magazines, etc. So most of the good libraries, generally even schools, have started setting up separate section for the e-library, where the stock and services of the library are automated with what you call a software like eGranthalaya, and many of us are using it. But how practical are we with it? How many of our students, or are the students able to freely access that? We are still very narrow-minded. We think that if we provide that internet facility and things in the library, our kids will get onto things that are unwanted. Somewhere or the other, it's high time now that we start educating our kids to use all this very, very wisely. We cannot hide these things from them for a longer period of time. I think somewhere or the other, we'll have to take a step. So online catalog of the library holdings should be made available to the students, where the users can search by using keywords like the author, title, subject. Now see, again and again, I tell you, kids these days, most of them are hyperactive. Many of them are into multitasking. So if we still hang on to the age-old techniques I'm telling you, we must encourage our kids to read books, the books that are available in the library. But at the same time, in this digital world, we need to make sure that our students know the system of e-library and they should have access to it. You have Kindle and things which many of us as elders are using, and many of our students are also using. This is one part of the school which I actually love, and I would wish that every school has a beautiful infirmary. Many of us as hard taskmasters believe that if a child complains of not feeling well, we feel that maybe he's not wanting to study, maybe his work is not complete. We cannot rule that out, but at the same time, I don't think we can straight away come to a conclusion. So I think every school should have an infirmary or what you call a sick room. I generally don't like using that word sick room. Infirmary is better, where you must have a trained staff, at least a trained nurse who can handle the kids who are sick. Let me tell you, children these days are very delicate. Living in nuclear families, lack of exercise, all different sorts of allergies, all different sorts of physical ailments, some way or the other, we need to take it up very seriously so that we do not have to take chances with the unforeseen. School leaders, many of us hardly give any importance to this room. I believe that it should be furnished very well. The bed sheets, the pillows, they should be beautiful where the child can come and relax. Now we cannot, just think that, okay, you have a child shamming always. It's not that. When you provide these facilities, I'm telling you, the child also starts getting genuine. You will find a few here and there, but I know all of us are very, very smart to tackle those situations. We are supposed to associate ourselves directly or indirectly, at least with one hospital or one good doctor who's very close to the institution somewhere, in case of emergencies, so that we can rush without losing time. We have to make sure that we take it up very, very seriously. I had already spoken about this, the facility that really needs to be provided now. We are talking about having taps with sensors so that children do not have to use their hands to put the tap on and put it off. We may have to invest a little bit over here, but I think some way or the other, we can increase the quality of the standard of our institutions by providing these things. I don't know how many of us actually keep hand wash or soaps in our washrooms. I've come across so many students who carry paper soaps with them. I've come across students who do not generally use a washroom in school because there is no soap kept in the washroom. We believe, as administrators, as people from the management, that keeping a soap cake there gets over in a day, or it gets lost, or it is stolen. Come on, now we have to start thinking about all these things. We will have to start providing all these things in school so that hygiene is at the topmost priority. I know you might say that these washrooms look like, dream washrooms. But somewhere close to them, I think we can be. It's not about making the washroom beautiful, but having the fittings and things as such that cleanliness is at the topmost. We do have issues in our institutions where you have the students maybe breaking, or at times things are not fitted on so well that they break on their own. It is only about sensitizing the students. It's only about making the students aware. It's only about creating that feeling of belongingness slowly among the students. And I tell you, nothing in the school will get lost or broken. It will all depend upon how we bring up our children from the lower classes. But we may have one or two students here and there who may damage school property here and there. I think good counseling needs to be done. And if we tap such students properly and win their hearts, they will set examples for the other students so that things become easy for us to monitor. A very, very important aspect over here is of having a health or wellness teacher. The CBSE guidelines very, very clearly earmark it. Can we ask ourselves, let it be a genuine confession to each one of us, how many of us have actually appointed a health wellness teacher that is a counselor in the school? And that too a professional, a person who's fit for the job. Many of us are scared to appoint them because we feel that students, once they get into their adolescence, they generally come up with all these matters and they'll go to the counselor and waste their time. And simply it may create another issue in the school. Come on, it's high time we forget all these things and start following norms. We do enter while filling in the OSS, whether you have the health wellness teacher, we do write yes. And we'll generally write the name of a student or a teacher or a staff member who's got a degree in psychology, and the purpose is solved. Is that counseling actually happening? No. We do know that all our teachers in the classrooms are capable of counseling. Our principals, vice principals, the headmasters, headmistresses are capable of counseling. But you actually require a well-trained person who is qualified to understand the difficulties of a student. A subject teacher cannot devote himself or herself because he or she has already got enough of work. So please ensure that these days the number of cases that are that we see around us is increasing. We talk about inclusive education. Now, inclusive education, actually these, you can just read along over here, the qualifications. When we talk about a special educator, we talk about having students in the class who are autistic, could be mentally retarded, suffering from cerebral palsy, or having certain specific learning disabilities like dyslexia. Are we able to identify? Many of us teachers are not able to identify them. And we expect a child who's basically a slow learner, without identifying the problem, we expect the child to score the same marks or better marks than the ones who are having it in the class. If we have the right counselors, they are able to tackle the child, they're able to counsel the parents, and such children, with the passage of time, are to be dealt differently. Let me tell you, I'm into the counseling board of Central Board of Secondary Education through telecounseling. of late have been empaneled with the state of Jammu and Kashmir also for the same purpose. And very soon, the state of Uttar Pradesh has also begun this telecounseling as a pilot project, and I have been asked to guide them for that too. Now, counseling is something that a counselor does not just for the salary, but let me tell you, a profession that has turned into a vocation for him or her. So let us give priority to this in our institutions so that the child who has been entrusted to us and is facing some difficulty or the other can be taken care of. And it is we as school leaders, we as members of the management need to take it up seriously so that not a single soul is lost on this rat race of education. I think all of you must have read this circular, 7th July 2020. We are talking about the revised academic curriculum for the session 2021. This has basically come up for two reasons. One, because of the teaching days or hours that we've lost due to COVID. But at the same time, as Father Ravi has already explained to you all, the National Education Policy, there too, the committee that is into it, NCERT, has already started working on it and have come up with an alternative academic calendar. You must have already gone through it. For grades 9 to 12, the new syllabus, the curriculum has already come, and the link for that is there in the letter below. For grades 1 to 8, NCERT has worked upon it and is already out with it. Now, we as people heading institutions will have to somewhere or the other work, keeping in mind these things. NCERT proposes to reduce the curriculum, keeping in mind that the core essentials are not lost. Critical thinking, where we focus on inquiry, discovery, discussion, and analysis-based teaching and learning methods for holistic education, that is to be given priority. When we talk about critical thinking, we talk about earlier schools used to talk about or think about completion of syllabus. Teachers also thought about completion of syllabus. Now we emphasize on learning outcomes. Basically, after you're teaching in a class, has or have your objectives been fulfilled? There is a purpose for introducing a particular topic in a particular class in a particular period. I think if it is objective based, and at the end of the period, if the teacher has got what we call the movement card, the exit card, which basically a student gives to a teacher, then the learning outcomes are fulfilled. So I think now we need to focus more on what we call objectives of teaching, that particular topic. And I think the pedagogy that we are adopting these days, if it is not studied well by the teacher, then the taught is not going to benefit from that. We need to talk about interactive classes. When we have 40, 50, 60, we're not supposed to have them in a class. The sole priority of the teacher goes to what we call discipline and at the same time completion of the syllabus. In that whole process, somewhere or the other, we do not allow or want our students to ask questions. If we do not allow our students to ask questions, they are never going to be developed in a way that we want to think critically. It will back again go to the same old system where we talk about the jug bug theory. From the jug, you keep on pouring into the mug. And there is no way in which the mug can pour it back or spill it over for the jug to understand. So I think interactive classes are a must now. And experiential learning, it cannot be explained in just 2 minutes. Basically, it's a beautiful workshop, a one-day workshop, even that's not enough, where the student comes to school and really enjoys being in school. Not because he's got good friends, not just because the teachers are loving, but whatever is being taught in the class interests him. And it has to be with fun, creative, collaborative, exploratory activities in the classroom for experiential learning. I tried it out in one of the classes in grade 6 the other day. We were teaching them the phases of the moon. It was an online class. And we asked all the students to buy a packet of Oreo biscuits. And they were all sitting at home with it. And once you separate the biscuits that are stuck together with the cream, you have to do it neatly. You can come out with all the different shapes that are seen of the moon according to the different days. And beautifully, all the children did it because the teacher was doing it for them on screen. And most of the children could do it, and they displayed it on the tray as per what you call the phases of the moon. They loved doing it, and I think that's the way the children would love to have it experiential. Teachers have to be a little creative. And if we want our teachers to be creative some way or the other, school leaders have to be involved. There is no other way out. As I've already explained to you, now the focus is on learning outcomes. Please excuse me. The focus is on learning outcomes, competencies, and the subject integration. I could hear Reverend Father Ravi explaining that. We just cannot think of silos among subjects or learning these days. If we have the primary or the main 5 subjects as English, Hindi, math, social science, and general science, we need to integrate. If you could recall in CCE, when we were having the assessments, we promoted integrated assessments where a child was coming and doing his maybe a recitation in Hindi, and he was the topic was given as such that he could be evaluated for his science, he could be evaluated for his maths, he could be evaluated for his general science. Now that is integration of subjects over there. Back again, some way or the other, on a lighter mode, we are slowly going to move to all that. So that when we use this term silos, that is compartmentalization, separating one subject completely from the other. No. Competency-based educations, where modules on preparing and implementing pedagogical plans based on competency and outcome-based education for school leaders. I think some way or the other, we need to, if not, if you haven't, I think pedagogically we have to get ourselves trained strongly. It is totally dependent upon the principal of the school, the vice principal, the headmaster and the headmistress to decide on which direction or on which track the school should move. If the heads have it in their head to make sure that we will go academically strong, I think there's no one or nothing that can challenge them. But it all depends upon priorities, how much we involve ourselves. And then we talk about the development of a scientific temper. Now, this is exactly from the national education policy. We are somehow or the other doing it in our schools, but it will come with stronger enforcement. And by the year 2023, the plan is going to be very clear. NCERT is working with it. The local SIERTs have also started with it. And by 2023, I think they'll come out with the syllabus, which is going to have the changed version of all this. I even wanted to take up this little bit. This is not from the CBSE regulations, but a few of my friends, we got together and we thought of deciding on some standard operation procedures when the schools reopen, if they reopen in the near future. Some suggestions that we came up with, and I think it would really be good for everyone to just go through it. Maybe you may not approve it, but it is just a suggestion to make sure or to facilitate easier functioning of the school in the new normal. Is a new term that we use these days, new normal. And in the new normal, I think there are certain things that we need to take care of. I think all schools should, this is just a suggestion from my team, we should think of first forming a special task force, which should comprise of the manager, the management, the principal, the middle level leaders, maybe 2 representatives from the PTA, a male and a female, the chief medical officer of the school, whoever's in charge, the medical in charge, and the school counselor. This is the core committee, which we call the special task force, and their job would be to raise awareness among parents, teachers, students, and education community at large to combat COVID-19. Because I think we are all aware and have taken it for granted that it may not go away so soon. The roles and responsibilities of the special task force: to develop detailed protocols of hygiene measures, cleaning procedures, social distancing measures, infrastructure setup, and medical emergency norms. Constitution of various sub-teams, and I'll tell you the sub-teams in the next slide, with an objective to delegate important domains of standard operative processes to ensure safe, sound, and healthy teaching learning environment for all. Now, when our kids start coming back to school, I think some way or the other, the first day itself, the school management, the whole team along with the teachers need to be so well prepared that the children are all at ease and comfortable just in the normal way, but keeping in mind that COVID is not spread through the school that we are running. So we'll have to define roles, responsibilities, and protocols for all sub-teams. To supervise and monitor implementations of SOPs and respond to needs of the school community regarding safety and well-being. Now, this is going to be the major task of the core committee, that is a special task force, which is going to design the rest of it. These are some more committees that need to be formed. Please, we already have so many committees in school, and if they do not function properly, I think some way or the other, it will be an utter failure. So the first one that we have is the ASC, Awareness and Sensitization Committee. Second, the Medical Emergency Committee. Third, Mental Health and Wellbeing Committee. Fourth, the Hygiene and Sanitization Committee. Fifth, the School Protocol Committee. Sixth, Academic Restructuring Committee, because we've already spoken about reducing the syllabus. And if it is not taken care of properly, if it is not monitored properly, some way or the other, it will create a confusion, not only among the teachers, from there it trickles to the students, and then of course, the parents will also be there with it. So these are the subcommittees that need to be made or formed, and every committee has got a specific role. Like the first one is Awareness and Sensitization Committee. It has to keep it as its priority to sensitize everyone, to make everyone aware about COVID-19. Children should not take it as a stigma. Children have to learn to live with it. So somewhere or the other, it is precautions, things that they need to be aware or taken care of, so that they are comfortable coming to school whenever the government orders for the schools to reopen. Simple things like wearing of masks, maintaining physical distance, not crowding at one place, carrying personal sanitizers, tissue papers or handkerchiefs, no sharing of food and water will be permitted. Staff in the staff room will not share tiffins, I hope so. All students to carry their own homemade food and water bottles, not to shake hands or hug friends. It's a new trend these days. The moment children, the elder ones, the moment they come into school, they are hugging each other. And no exchange of books or stationery items. So every student will have to become very, very responsible. Every student will have to be very independent, and how you're going to implement it is going to be in a smooth manner. You just cannot come like a policeman with the do's and don'ts. It's only going to create commotion. So it has to get into it like, you butter and slip it in so that the children learn to live with it. And everywhere the markings of social distancing and the other unwell fairness awards, everything has to be taken care of. The Medical Emergency Committee is going to be the most important one working on this, where basically you have the school doctor, the nurse, the administrative officer, and the department heads. And everywhere, everyone in the school should very, very clearly know whom to contact in case of any emergency. And if the Medical Emergency Committee finds that a child, okay, you may have all the other difficulties also, but if any symptoms of COVID and things, I think you should know how to deal with it. Everything is very clearly given in this slide. Cannot go point by point with it. But at the same time, helpline numbers should be displayed. This committee should have the helpline numbers of the hospitals, the doctors who are dealing with COVID patients specifically. This committee first needs to get trained well how to take care of children who have these symptoms, how to at least sensitize the staff about COVID. And of course, with that, they need to even make sure that these kids are comfortable, the staff gets comfortable. Mental Health and Well-being Committee. Very important once again there. Keeping a sound and an amiable home environment. It is this committee, along with the special educators, the wellness teacher, and the heads, of course, all get together and make sure that the children are so comfortable that even at home, they do not develop this anxiety. I know I have come across so many children during COVID for counseling who were scared to come out of their homes. Some of them developed this habit of washing their hands every 5 minutes. There were some who were using the hand sanitizers so much that what happened, they started getting skin infections. Now, with all these things, some way or the other, this new normal situation has to be lived with. And we as educators, we as monitors and mentors need to maybe slip it into them, into their behavioral patterns, so that nobody takes it for granted, nobody ignores it, but lives with it in a healthy way. So the children at home need to be safe because there are family troubles too. And these things worry them. So when they come to school, at least they should feel happy. Avoid watching too much negative news on television. Reinforce positivity by counting on the achievements worldwide. So some way or the other, we have to start making our kids and of course the staff that comes in to think critically and of course positively so that we will all come out together out of this situation. Physical fitness is to be promoted. Children have to start developing this habit of regular exercising. They will have to start this habit of getting up early in the morning. Nowadays, you have children sleeping till 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock if they don't have classes, of course. Otherwise, initially, you must have seen whole night they would be awake and sleeping during the day. Now, these things are all going to hamper the growth of the child, both mentally and physically. So we have to ensure good health. Yoga sessions, breathing exercises, meditation, aerobics, etc., to be planned to cultivate carefulness and maintain interest in life. And somewhere behind all these things, with the proper balanced diet that they eat at home, somewhere or the other, back again, I'll tell you, this positivity has to be inculcated in our students. The next group that we have, the next subcommittee is the Hygiene and Sanitation Committee, which basically takes care of all the aspects related to hygiene in school. Let it be your wash areas, let it be the washrooms, let it be the drinking water areas, let it be the dustbins. Have you ever realized that even the dustbins need to be washed regularly? In some of the institutions, we see that the dustbin, once placed in the beginning of the year, is only moved out once it is broken, I think. Even dustbins need to be washed on a regular basis so that they are hygienic. So we have this committee that takes care of all the hygiene and sanitation. The next one that we have is the School Protocol Committee. It's a special task force will be responsible to create the customized school protocol through the School Protocol Committee of each school headed by the principal and assisted by the vice principal and headmistress of each department with an objective to help the stakeholders to adopt the new normal at ease. Now, a protocol will have to be with each and every section and department of the school, right from your buses to how even the glasses have to be disposed. Sanitization at the entry point of the school. Do we do that or we've taken it for granted? As you enter the gates, do we have areas marked for people to move so that social distancing is maintained? Have we kept separate exit doors for the people to move out? Now, this protocol has to be designed by the protocol committee hand in hand with the core committee. The last one that we have is academic restructuring committee. And I think I have already taken it up by explaining to you how the curriculum is going to be changed, has changed, and this committee, along with all the heads of the departments, all the different heads of different sections, study it properly so that no one is misguided and the children get comfortable with it. I think if we move ahead with these suggestions, taken up seriously, you may have your own ways of functioning according to the situations or the facilities available or the people that you have in your setup or the locality that your school is situated in. You may come out with your own plans. But kindly make sure that we work safely, make sure that we work with a very alert system, not only among the core committee, but each and every staff of the school is aware so that once the school reopen, whenever they reopen, everyone is so sensitized that we are careful and everybody enjoys each and every school day. Today, 21st of September, is the World Peace Day. And I have a beautiful quote over here. Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. So on this occasion of World Peace Day, I think let us decide to come to peace or come at peace so that with the quote that I have, if you love your work, you will never have to work. Let it be COVID, let it be any challenging situation. We as teachers, as I always say, it is not a profession, it is a vocation. Every challenging situation is just one situation at hand for us to prove our mettle. I think with that, I've tried to cover up a little bit through the regular functioning of the school, and I'll conclude my session here. Over to Meenu Paul, ma'am.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir, for sharing your views on the topic. The audience are welcomed with your queries.
I believe it's already 5:30, so they must be, wanting to rush home and begin with their daily chores. But I'm all ready.
It can also be that your session was so good and no doubts left.
I'm so happy, Father, to hear that. Let's always be positive about everything, Father.
Exactly.
Yes, Father Thomas, thank you so much, Father. Father Ravi, thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. The talk was really informative and interesting. As teachers, we don't find ourselves involved in many of these regulations. But now that we've been involved and informed of all these details, I'm sure we can all do our bit in making our school building and infrastructure such that it facilitates the growth of the students. It was really an eye-opening session, sir. The intricacies of managing a school which were beyond our understanding can now be grasped by us. Your guidelines for opening school and functioning in the future will surely prove beneficial in this unprecedented time. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you,
Uh,
ma'am.
Yeah. I now request Father Thomas to propose the vote of thanks.
Dear friends, almost the day is done, and I think it is very unfair if I do not thank the people who really made it. And responsibly, we have Dr. Jonas Richard, the first resource person of the day. Before who really set the tone right. Unfortunately, he had some technical problems, so his message was cut short. Suddenly, he will come back on the last day. As Dr. Jonas said, love first, only then you can correct. I felt that is very true. As an educator, as a teacher, or as a principal, and as a Christian, I first and then you correct. And that policy runs everywhere the best. And he said, better prepare and prevent than repair and regret. And that was a very striking statement for a teacher and for all of us, that better we prepare and prevent the calamities than repair and regret at the end of it. And these all are things that we need to keep in mind always. I wish to thank Dr. Jonas for his very lively uh, on concept of education talk. The session was very lively, and he emphasized on the point that the positive discipline technique that he emphasized. Sir Jonas, I don't know whether you are there, but I wish to thank you and acknowledge the gratitude your contribution for the success of this. Uh, then, Father Ravi, I wish to thank you so much. You have really, really mesmerized everyone on the topic of new education policy. And more than what it contains, you enlightened us very critically. You gave your own views, which really, opened the eyes, opened our conscience in many ways, and prepared us very much to look forward and to be critical and to be observing the move of the government, the move of the hidden agenda of different groups. Your exposition of the entire policy was appreciative. Every one of us, with 100% attention, listened to you, and there was abundance of information and knowledge that we received from those two sessions. Thank you, Father. Thank you very much for a well-prepared session, and it was really appreciated by everyone, even through SMS and through the chat box messages. Now, finally, I would like to thank Dr. George Thomas. He is a man with a great talents and great uh, sense of, you know, sense of humor, as well as a man with a lot of ideals and principles. What I love in you is the way that you live, what you preach, or what you believe. I appreciate your faith in the principles that you believe and the way you conduct yourself. And you gave us a very brief information about how to run a school, and now how to manage a school if at all we reopen after Corona. Your insights are very deep, and you have well planned how to go about to reopen the school after Corona. And the core committees and mental health committee and medical committee, I'm sure that with all, I think we all are in need of all these committees, so that the smooth running of the institution may take place. Otherwise, probably we may take it very lightly. Okay, government has allowed us to open, and we keep some sanitizers here and there, and Probably some wash places maybe made extra, but surely I'm sure that nobody would have taken so much care with a number of committees set up and supervising the cleanliness part, the social distancing, and the hygiene. Sir, you really opened our eyes, and I'm sure that we will try to follow the SOP that you proposed. In any case, we would not be a cause for the spread of corona through our institution.
Thank you, sir.
And the CBSE points that you really in the UDIs and OISs and the integrity with the school records. I know it really matters, and we will try to stick to the real guidelines that you proposed, and certainly we will not be a victim. We hope that we will not be a victim of any kind of or foul practice in our institutions. Thank you very much, sir, and I'm sure
Thank you, sir.
that you will climb and reach higher and higher, and we will never forget your dead horse uh, introduction. We will always remember that, and we will make sure that dead horses are given life, and we will see that the dead horse is made to run. Thank you so much. God bless
Thank
you.
you so much, Father. Keep me in your prayers.
Sure, sure. I wish to thank all the participants for being with us for the entire day. I know it was quite hectic, and because the topics were really hectic. And tomorrow also we will be having quite similar day, but I'm sure that it will be entertaining and informative. Thank you very much. God bless you all. Have a good night. Thank you. See you tomorrow
Thank you.
morning
Bye,
at
Father.
9. Thank
Thank you,
you.
Thank you,
Father.
Meenu,
Thank
ma'am.
you, Father.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Thank
Father.
you, Father.
Father.
Thank you, Father.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Father.
Thank you, Father.
Thank you, Father.